Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. A couple of days ago, I posted a video talking about the fact that Takeo is a spy, or Takeo was a spy. It sort of works in present tense as well because of the way the universes are lined up, but that's besides the point. Takeo is a spy. The letter itself that gives us that information is really interesting for the storyline, not only of future DLC maps potentially, which is really fascinating, but also of Takeo's backstory a little bit and how his character has developed over the years. I mentioned in that first video that I would do a follow-up and talk about some of the more nitty-gritty details, the real nuances of the text, and a couple of theories I have about the deeper meaning behind all of this. And that's exactly what this video is going to contain. I also asked on Twitter if you guys thought that it would be best for me to relay the message again in this video just to give you a refresher, and the majority of people, in fact everyone that responded, said yes, give it to us again, so I'm going to really quickly run through it again now. If you don't want the refresher, just skip forward in the video a minute or two, something like that, and you'll be a-okay and good to go. Also, if you haven't checked out the previous video, I highly recommend you do so, because otherwise what I'm going to say in this vid won't necessarily make sense. Takeo says, "To my beloved Emperor, it's been several months since I last received orders from you, and I cannot help but say that I'm at my wit's end. Since I landed on the island, I, your foolish servant, have continued my inspection and recording of Division 9's activities. However, despite being directly dispatched by you, they regard my work with suspicious eyes. As such, I've been barred from and forbidden access to almost all research areas. The situation continues to worsen. The installation commander ordered me to hand over my weapons for the duration of my stay. If he hadn't shown me the relevant papers ordering me to comply to maintain security, marked with your signature and seal, I would no doubt have objected. I've never raised any doubts whatsoever concerning your judgment, sir, but I am concerned that these circumstances may prove a great hindrance to my mission. I understand how important the alliance is for our righteous cause and final victory, but the influence of the German operating force, Group 935, has become increasingly worrisome. Over the last few months, the number of officers they have here has increased. I cannot help but think that it is they who are propelling the plan. Judging by what I've seen, the research done by Division 9 has been far beyond acceptable. In fact, their aberrational methods of weapons research can only be described as abnormal. Not only do they use prisoners of war for living body tests, but they also have been trying to control the supernatural powers of Element 115. I therefore think that if we permit them to continue their work, dark clouds may soon loom over our great country. I, your foolish servant, will continue to watch them and will report to you wherever possible. If the idea so pleases you, I think it's necessary that you intervene directly in order for us to better understand the aim of Division 9's research and make clear the ramifications of their plans. I hope you receive this message. Your humble servant, Takeo Masaki." Voila. Pretty painless stuff, right? Nothing too crazy in there. Or rather, nothing too crazy at first glance. There is some crazy stuff in there, in my opinion at least, that I'm going to dive into in this video. In the last vid, I mentioned two things that I said I would bring up in the future. One of them was my timestamping of this letter with the brand World War II. I said, kaboom, this is a World War II era letter, and I didn't justify it, and I said, you know what, I'll bring that up in a future video, and that's going to happen in this vid. And I also mentioned the interesting, sort of strange nature of this use of the foolish servant when he mentions, "I, your foolish servant, da-da-da-da-da." That's a very interesting phrase because it's quite unusual, and I'm going to explore an idea associated with that as well that I think is pretty key, or maybe not necessarily key, but I think it's potentially a really cool little Easter egg that Treyarch have thrown in here to give us some extra info to A, date this, and B, universe date this as well. Universe date actually sounds really weird. What I mean is identify whatever universe this is from. Because we've got so many universes in Zombies now, actually seemingly infinite universes, but that's kind of besides the point because we sort of seem to be sticking in a couple of main ones. This gives us information, in my opinion, about which universe this letter is residing in, or rather has been sent in. Before we jump into those topics, I think that it's first worth mentioning the fact that Division 9 are very much new to the story, right? They have not been seen in any capacity whatsoever at all before Der Eisendrache. They literally didn't exist, or rather we didn't know that they existed. And so it seems a little odd that they've suddenly not only been just plonked into the story, but they've been plonked in such a way that they seem pretty damn important. Like, this isn't just the Ascension group, for example, who were important in their own way, but didn't really have any massive theory-shattering impact on the story itself, because they were just the Ascension group and that was that. But these guys seem to be really quite heavily entrenched in things. If you guys remember that one message that we decoded on Der Eisendrache that says, after the success at the Rising Sun facility, Division 9 is moving with Phase 2. The island facility is now operational, and initial testing underway. That message there suggests that D9 are involved with maps as old as Shino Numa, which is pretty much where the story really started to take shape. Sure, we had Verrückt, but if you guys have watched my video that I posted the other day talking about a spy in 935, no, I'm not talking about Takeo, it's the Zombies Storyline Explained series that I've just started. It's on my channel if you want to check it out, link in the description. You'll know that it wasn't until Shino when the characters actually were introduced, and so I kind of credit Shino Numa with the birthing of the main story. I digress. It's safe to say, regardless of any of that stuff, that Division 9 clearly are deep-rooted in the origins of the Call of Duty Zombies storyline, and particularly in whichever universe they are being introduced in. Now, is it the universe that Der Eisendrache is set in? Because that is a different universe, and this is key, that is a different universe to the universe in which we play Shino Numa, or we played Shino Numa back on World at War. They were the 1.0s that were playing on that map. In Der Eisendrache, you're not playing as the 1.0s. In fact, one of the 1.0s is present, and it's Dempsey because you shoot him down from the sky. He's in the sky, in the rocket, you shoot him down, his capsule falls out, and, well, if you guys have done the Easter egg, you know what happens there. So we need to start thinking about this question. Are Division 9 in multiple universes? Do they exist in the Der Eisendrache universe as well as the 1.0's universe? Or are they specific to one or the other? One potential point of view is to say, okay, this scrap of paper was found in Der Eisendrache and it talks about Division 9. Similarly, there are other ciphers in Der Eisendrache that talk about Division 9. As such, it would make sense for Division 9 to be in the Der Eisendrache universe. But part of me doesn't actually agree with that. Even though logically, in my opinion, it makes sense, I sort of feel like maybe we're not seeing that as the case here. So, another point of view, and again, I'm going to bring up a couple of them in this video, and you guys can pick and choose the theories that you like. Another option is the idea that Division 9 actually are very much a part of that original universe, but because Treyarch hadn't really thought of them at that point when they were writing that original story, they just never really featured. But they were actually there, and they're now being brought into the story and sort of planted in that old storyline that was written all those years ago in the reshaping of the story that we're being presented with in Black Ops 3. That was quite the mouthful, so I'm going to say it in clearer words, or at least I'm going to try to. In Black Ops 3, we have the old story from World at War, Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2, and we have the new story, which is in this game. So, what's been happening is Treyarch have been essentially refocusing our perspective and reshaping our opinions of some of those old key storyline plot points by introducing new information in this game that makes us reconsider what was going on in the past. I think the inclusion of Division 9 is potentially one of those very things. They have said Division 9 weren't mentioned in the past, but we're now giving you this new info, and we're giving it to you in such a way that it suggests that they were actually around in that original 1.0's universe, and they were there despite the fact that they were never mentioned, and now you've got to work them into all your ideas. That's what I think is potentially happening here. We've had another mention of Division 9, which we can use to bolster our ideas about which universe they reside in, and also give us some context about what their role is in the story. It's the chalkboard cipher that I solved myself with WaterKH as well. We did it together. The cipher reads as follows. Division 9 has completed the resurrection of the ancient beasts for your eastern front. We expect Group 935 to reciprocate the favor. I won't go into too much detail here because I have an entire video talking about that very cipher, but I will say that that puts us firmly, in my opinion, in World War II. That is why I said in the previous video that I think World War II is the correct time period for this letter to have originated, or at least it's the right ballpark area. So from that, and I mentioned this in the previous video as well, we can draw the conclusion that Division 9 are most likely the Japanese version of Group 935. That's the best way to put it. They are the Japanese answer to all of the weapons research and all of the experimentation that the Germans are doing within Group 935 itself. Even though Group 935 is somewhat a multinational organization, it is owned, or rather it is managed by Germans by all means, and the Group 935 equivalent in Japan seemingly is Division 9. They're working together on this island on various experiments. In fact, they've even got living body tests going on with human guinea pigs, which is certainly within Group 935's remit, and so that suggests that Division 9 are working along the same lines. D9 existing during World War II doesn't actually tell us whether they are Original Universe or Der Eisendrache Universe. That is still ambiguous from that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about this very topic in the comments section down below. Now then, let's put on our tinfoil hats, okay? And go down a little path I'd like to call, holy moly, this is a pretty far out theory, but maybe, just maybe, this is Jason Blundell's way of going, oi you chaps that know the story, you chapettes that know the story, I'm going to give you a little throwback to play with here. Just a little one, and hopefully it'll tickle your taste buds for some fun stuff coming up in DLC 2 or DLC 3. I'm not even going to bother launching into the In the Cell Below the Waves is Where Honor Suffers cipher, because that's worthy of its entire own video, and oh boy is that interesting. For now we're going to focus on the foolish servant phrase that Takeo says, I believe, twice in the cipher. So for now we're going to focus on the foolish servant phrase that Takeo employs, I believe, twice during the cipher. So let's do a quick recap. He says, since I landed on the island, I, your foolish servant, have continued my inspection and recording of Division 9's activities. And then right at the end, he says, I, your foolish servant, will continue to watch them and will report to you wherever possible. So he says it twice. It's an old phrase, this. It's not a modern turn of phrase. It's not a modern expression. It's the sort of thing that you might actually be caught off guard by when translating this, and indeed, the people that were working on it were a little puzzled initially as to what it meant, but then managed to figure out. I actually suggested, maybe this means this thing here, and the dude that was working on it was like, holy moly, how did you know? How did you guess that? And I was like, well, I'll explain in a video very soon, and that's what I'm about to do now. So, it's a self-deprecating phrase. Takeo is saying, I am nothing compared to you, my beloved emperor, and he's essentially deferring to this greater authority. That's something we absolutely expect from Takeo. But I theorize that maybe this is an interesting way of Treyarch working in some old lore that we haven't thought about in a long time into this sort of present-day, quote-unquote, cipher. What if Takeo here is sort of making a reference to the fact that he was test subject N3WB. What does that spell out? Noob, or noob. Takeo was test subject noob in the past, and now he's referring to himself as this foolish servant. I think that maybe there's a very tenuous link there between Takeo being this noob and Takeo being this fool. I think that it makes sense. If he refers to himself as your humble servant all the time, and then suddenly starts throwing in your foolish servant instead, maybe before he was captured, and I'm talking in the 1.0's universe here, maybe what's happened is Takeo was referring to himself as this, maybe the letter got intercepted, ripped up, and thrown to the four winds. Maybe this letter never made it to the Emperor. We don't know. We can't really speculate about that because we just don't have the information. But maybe somebody found out that he was referring to himself in reference to the Emperor as this Emperor's foolish servant, and they went, all right, you know what? We're going to capture you, pal. You've been amongst Group 935. In fact, that makes perfect sense. If his letter did get intercepted, they would know that he was spying on Group 935 and spying on the division for the Emperor, and so they could capture him on those grounds and say, we're going to turn the tables a little bit, and you're now going to be test subject noob. That's maybe what's going on here. I personally think that would be really cool if it was intentional. That is fantastic. Treyarch, you've done it again with the super crazy, in-depth, cryptic little Easter eggs that just don't really necessarily hold any weight, but are really cool regardless, and allow us to theorize and speculate about the potential extra story stuff that's going on behind the scenes in the story. For example, if you guys remember the hanging man on Shinonuma, another instance of this sort of thing happening, there were loads and loads of speculative theories back in the day about the fact that there's blood on the floor of the Rising Sun facility below the hanging man, and so maybe he was killed elsewhere and then sort of dragged across the floor. Maybe it was made to look like it was a suicide or look like it was an accident, but it wasn't because of that blood, and the blood is the sort of evidence that gives us the information that it wasn't a suicide or whatever. Those sorts of theories that spawn out of tiny little scraps of information, no pun intended, yes, we're looking at scraps of paper here, but those sorts of theories, in my opinion, are some of the most entertaining in the zombie storyline. And when I first saw this attempting to be translated, and I saw the word, and people were saying, oh, it seems to mean like idiot group, or like something to do with not being very clever, I was like, you know what? Maybe this is a bit of a sort of self-deprecating phrase referring to Takeo being, in some senses, a noob. And the person translating was like, holy moly, you're kind of right. And I was like, well then, that's perfect, because I've just basically interpolated, or rather extrapolated, from the information we know from the previous story stuff back in the day, back in 2008, back in 2009 in World at War, and pushed that into the future, or rather into the present day, with the Eisendrache. This sort of stuff absolutely just makes me so happy to be a Zombies fan, because I personally find it ridiculously entertaining to just plod through and think about and consider where we may be going in the future as well, because if this is indeed a letter from Takeo 1.0, then this is probably going to give us a load of information not only about the Pohnpei map, which I really think is pretty much confirmed at this point, just because of how often they seem to be referring to it, to this island and to those very coordinates, but moreover, it may tell us what the fate of Takeo 1.0 might have been prior to the events of DLC 2 or DLC 3 when we actually play on Pohnpei. Think about it. Dempsey 1.0 got blasted off into space. There was no real precursor to that. They showed us that information in the intro cutscene. But with this, could they be foreshadowing? Also, in conjunction with In the Cell Below the Waves is where Honor suffers, could they be suggesting that Takeo has been potentially captured on the island, and Takeo 1.0 is going to be contained in some kind of cell below the waves, below the sea around this island, maybe beneath the island itself? Who knows what's going on there, but maybe this is all one big plot from Treyarch to get us hyped for the future maps, and then when those maps come out, we can look back and go, you know what? They were wiggling this in front of our faces the whole time. That's the theory. So, you guys might agree with it, you guys might not. That last bit was certainly more speculative than the initial stuff I was saying, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about who Division 9 are, who the ancient beasts are that they're resurrecting, what exactly their plan is, what their fate is going to be in terms of the story. Are they going to be explored further in future maps after the Pohnpei map or not? Do they have any real significance in terms of the outcome of the Black Ops 3 story arc? All of these questions are worth considering, and ultimately, it's interesting too that Takeo, despite his honorable nature, started off life seemingly as a spy. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Subscribe too, and like the video. Cool. Tally ho. Bye-bye.